Hello, and welcome to Small Business Success Stories at SCORE Houston. This is where we bring insights, experiences, and the journey of successful small business entrepreneurs. SCORE mentors volunteer their time to guide small businesses. SCORE is America's largest network of volunteer business mentors supported by the U.S. Small Business Administration. Here in Houston, we provide free confidential mentoring and education to help entrepreneurs start, grow, and succeed. Now, let's dive into today's small business success story.
I'm PV Bala, SCORE Mentor and host of today's podcast. Our guest today is Sarah Lieberman, founder of Dandelion Cafe, a Houston breakfast and brunch institution that has grown from a single neighborhood coffee shop in Bel Air to 3 locations across the city. Sarah came to Houston from Philadelphia, left a career in oil and gas to follow her passion for hospitality, and built a cafe that has not only survived 2 hurricanes, a global pandemic, but emerged stronger after each one. She is 2000 SBA Houston District Small Business Person of the Year, and her story is one of deliberate resilience, strategic growth, and the power of knowing when to ask for help. Sarah, welcome to SCORE Houston podcast.
Right. Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Lovely. Of course, the first question I had to ask is you came to Houston for oil and gas, not for restaurants. Yeah.
Correct.
And then what made you walk away from that and into starting this cafe?
So I grew up in the restaurant industry up in the Northeast, and my parents had a pizza place. So from the time I was 12, I was raised in hospitality, basically. I moved to Philadelphia. That was in Delaware. I moved to Philadelphia, went to school for product management. Basically, I have an industrial design degree.
Hmm.
And I was working in hospitality at a coffee shop while I was in college. And then
Okay.
I got out for a little while, and I was a product manager. I got out of hospitality for a little bit. I was a product manager for a bicycle company, actually, for a few years, and travel around the world. I was in Asia a lot, actually, quite a bit. And that was a great experience too, just traveling around. And then I got laid off in 2009 when the economy took a downturn.
Yep.
And Houston economy stays pretty steady when the rest of the economy takes a downturn. And so
That's
it
true.
was very hard in the product management field to get back into it, especially in a niche area. The bicycle community is very small. And so it's hard to get back into that. And I was able to find a job here in 2012 in oil as a quality assurance manager. Since I had been a product manager, I was able to move down here and work for a small product company doing quality assurance. And I did that for about a year and a half. And I am just not a desk job kind of person. Growing up in hospitality, growing up in a restaurant, running around, traveling the world, I like to stay on the move. And so it was really tough for me when I moved here to just sit at a desk, work 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And so I had decided about a year and a half in, I just thought this just isn't the right position for me. And I went back to my roots, which was hospitality, and started working for a couple different catering companies, that type of thing. And then in, 2014, 2015, I really was like, I really want to do something on my own. I had hit my mid 30s. And I had this idea about starting a coffee shop because I really loved the coffee shop that I worked at when I was in college. I wanted something small. And a friend of mine had been to SCORE, and she said, "Hey, there's this organization called SCORE. You should go check them out." And literally the first day that I went to SCORE, I walked in with the idea and nothing else. That was it. I walked in with the idea and the experience, the hospitality experience, but really didn't know what I was doing quite at all. And so I walked in and I met Jerry and Raj the first day. They were my team from the beginning. And with SCORE, I went to them every week. They would give me homework every week. And that was the beginning of my business career, really, is learning how to write a business plan, learning about financials. That was all new to me because I didn't have a financial career. I just had the hospitality and I had the grit and the drive, and they saw that in me. I didn't even have that much money, to be honest. That's part of my startup too. But yeah, so that's how I ended up at SCORE. Maybe that was a little more than more
But
information about how I got here, how I ended up in
no,
Houston.
that's wonderful.
That's how
That's
I
a
ended up
very,
at SCORE.
that's nice. Tell me, how did you select the name Dandelion? What's the background to that?
So Dandelion, it was, I had always, when I was in college, I remember talking to a friend who was in the hospitality industry. And I said, I really want to have a breakfast place where people feel like they're eating in a garden. And I just had that idea when I was in college, when I was working at the coffee shop. And so when I had come up with this idea in 2015, I was always into gardening. My mom had me gardening from the time I was little, right? I grew up with my hands in the dirt gardening, and I was really into flowers. And so I wanted a cafe that kind of symbolized that, right? Like eating in a garden. And so some friends of mine and we started going through different Texas wildflowers. Oh, it could be Bluebonnet Cafe, or oh, it could be this. And we stopped on Dandelion. I also wanted it to be something that could be called the one word name, like Dandelion,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
You could knock the cafe off of and just call it a one word name and people knew what you were talking about. So we started going through different Texas wildflowers, and somebody had mentioned to me, because I had wanted it to be a coffee shop originally, they were like, oh, you blow on a dandelion and the seeds kind of float, right? Just like you blow on a hot cup of coffee, right? To cool a cup of coffee off. And so
Okay.
that kind of was like, oh, that kind of stuck. I was like, oh, that's great branding. And so we ran with the name originally from the beginning. Yeah.
Wonderful. So this is the one that you started at that time, yeah? This
Yes.
Dandelion Cafe. So
Yes.
tell me, what was the initial investment required and what kind of equity you could put in, what you had to borrow? How did that work out?
Sure.
Did
Oh
you
my
have any
goodness.
idea that this is going to be the capital cost involved? What is working capital? And how did you experience all those things?
Oh my gosh, I was so green. I had no idea what I was doing, right? I've always been a financially savvy person. I'll be honest, I'm not a huge budgeter, but I just am good with finances. I'm good with money. I understand it. And so, really, I think I didn't start in a very traditional way that restaurants start at all. I had no collateral, which was tough for loans. I had $40,000 to my name.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if people know that much about restaurants, but if you're not going into a space that was a restaurant previously, right now, I've built 2 restaurants from the ground up. My first one cost $135,000. The second one I built from the ground up cost over $1 million. Traditionally, restaurants, even when I built this 10 years ago, cost way more than $135,000. I made it work. So truly, it was crazy. I had the $40,000. I borrowed 10 from my brother and 10 from my aunt. So I came with $60,000. Now, I had been going to SCORE. They'd been helping me write my business plan, helping me with financial forecasting, all of that. And assumptions, everything is fictitious, right? I've never had a business before. I have no financials to give the bank to back up what I'm doing whatsoever. I have my job, which they say, oh, are you going to keep your job and start a restaurant at the same time? And you're like, no, I can't. How am I going to keep my job and then also work in the restaurant? It was impossible. So it really made getting funding really difficult because outside of my experience, there wasn't a lot there for people to invest in, right? And so my SCORE mentors saw my drive and my grit. And ultimately, that's what got me the money that I did get. So it was a very challenging thing when you go to banks for traditional loans for businesses. it's like closing on a mortgage. Every time you fill out the application, it's quite a process. And I ended up going to 7 different banks
Okay.
and getting turned down 7 different times,
Okay.
trying to get even small amounts of money. I wanted to try an SBA loan, but I needed 100,000. Most banks didn't want to lend less than 100,000 for an SBA loan. And so ultimately what I ended up doing, and I don't necessarily recommend this for everyone, I ended up taking out 5 different credit cards because I had great credit, 0 interest credit cards for 12 to 18 months and maxing out $35,000 on credit cards. And then I got this small micro lender called the Bayou Micro Fund, who I'm actually on their board now.
Lovely.
They put up collateral for me to get a small bank loan of $35,000 as well. So that was it. I had the 35,000 on a credit card, I had the 35,000 that I got from the bank, and then I had my 60. And that was pretty much all she wrote. And I was able to figure that out and make that work. And it was really difficult. The first year I was open, I think I made $11,000 for myself that I paid myself. And that was just to cover my bare minimum, my bills. I was eating at the restaurant, working all day, every day at the restaurant. Definitely a challenging way to start a restaurant. I wouldn't do it now. I'll tell you that. But it worked out in the long run and I learned a lot along the way.
So tell me, when you estimated the capital cost,
Sure.
whatever it was, and how much you ended up with, were you within that budget or you'd exceeded that?
I would say we were pretty close to that budget. I had very inexpensive contractors. And I knew we were going to come out about 120. And then I was thinking I'd have 15 or so working capital. So we came out pretty close. But what I didn't understand at the time was cash flow and how all of that worked.
Yeah,
And 3 months in, I ran out of money. And
exactly.
I ran out of money. And one thing that I hadn't touched was my 401k. So I left. And so I sat down and I talked with other restaurant owners who had been in similar situations and old different mentors. And I said, do I shut the doors or do I take my 401k out? And I took the risk and I pulled out my retirement, my little amount that I had, and I injected it. And that got me to break even.
So which month you reached the break even really?
It took about 9 months.
And
Great.
what did you plan in the business plan? Did you expect it will take so long, or were you more
I
optimistic?
expected at least a year, I think was
Okay,
about what we had estimated. So
that's
it
good.
was a little sooner. Yeah, it was great. I mean,
Good. That's
I
good.
will tell you 9 months is actually really great for a restaurant.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It usually takes longer than that.
Correct.
I was doing everything. I literally built the tables in the restaurant. I spent $500 on wood, built all the tables myself, tiled the bar. I did a lot of stuff on my own. The reason we could reach break even was because I was watching my costs so much and because I was pretty financially savvy. I was really on top of that stuff. And then as we grew, I was able to add a manager on and other things that we really needed to be successful. But initially, I ran a very tight financial ship to get us to that break even point.
In terms of the offerings, the menu, what you started with and what all you added subsequently, and where was the profit mainly coming from for you?
So I'll tell you, coffee doesn't have a lot of profit unless you're doing very high volume. So you have to do very high volume and you just want to be a coffee shop and actually make money. Starbucks high volume. And so I was learning that. Initially, I just had some pastries and some grab and go items in a refrigerated case, a few sandwiches, that kind of thing. And one thing I think as an owner and a boss, you need to listen to your community. And so my vision was a coffee shop, but the community that was coming in here, everybody said, you need breakfast. You need breakfast. You need breakfast. And everyone will tell you how to run your business all the time. Oh, you should do this thing. And oh, you should do that thing. You know, like, yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for the input. But when you hear your local community who's supporting you saying the same thing over and over again, you need to be flexible to change your vision of what you want it to be. And my community was telling me to serve breakfast. And so I thought, okay, I got to serve breakfast. And this was before break even. And adding just a few items. I couldn't afford a chef, but I had a small kitchen and we were just doing grab and go, prepping grab and go stuff. We turned it into a small kitchen where we could do some egg dishes, basic egg dishes, and breakfast tacos, breakfast sandwich, that type of thing, oatmeal, some small stuff. And that is what got us to break even within a month or two of adding those food items. And we started to grow more. So that was a very small breakfast menu at first. And that's how we started turning into a restaurant. And you really make more money on food than you do coffee.
So this, what you recommend for any newcomer into the cafe business would be that it's very difficult to make break even purely on cafe and cakes and pastries or what. So you need to have a food menu run partially at least like a restaurant. That's where possibly the profitability will come in, and possibly that's what is going to attract more customers to walk in. Is that right?
That depends on the community that you're putting the cafe in too, right? You need to really know who your demographic is and who you're building the for, right? We know that our demographic is young, affluent families. And so when we open our cafes, that's where restaurants go. I would love to own the property, but most of the time, where we need to be is not where we can buy property, right? So we know what our demographic is. I think that's key, right? So then, yes, having food items and that type of stuff on the menu is very helpful to bring more people in.
So this, when did you look at moving, starting a second restaurant and then the third? By the time you had created enough surplus for you to invest reserves?
Yeah, so we had talked about it for a long time. We didn't open our second one until 2 years ago. That's not entirely true. About 3 years ago now. But what happened was our second one was we had started to search for a second one about 6 years old, 7 years old. I will say I brought on a partner at year two who I had met in the restaurant, and he and I had started dating. We'd been together for a little while. He was a chef. I had met him through a friend, and we had a baby. And then the restaurant had gotten to the point where it could support both of us, and it just made the most sense for him to come on because I was not a chef or a feed person. I 100% have been a front of house people person, hospitality person, right? And so I'm like, oh my gosh, when I have to do a menu, I like loathe it because I'm not a creative food person. So it worked out really well once the restaurant was able to support the both of us that he would come on and he redid the menu. And that's when we started really seeing growth. It had grown a little bit with the menu that I put in, but when he came on, I'd say by the third year, he added more menu items that made us more into a breakfast restaurant. And that was really, we started seeing a lot of growth then. So then he was there for about 4-ish years and we had done really well. And we had decided we want to start looking for another location. And we actually, that may have even been year 5. We were looking for a location close to year or two because we knew our demographic. We knew the neighborhoods that we needed to be in, and we weren't going to settle until we found the right location. Location is so key for restaurants. And so the day that our second location's property was listed, they had 6 LOIs the day it was listed. And we went to see it, and they wanted a breakfast brunch concept in that location that had proven success. And we'd already been around 5 or 6 years, 7 years, maybe by that point. And so we got chosen to be in that location. Like the day the property was listed, it got snapped up by us almost immediately. So then actually that turned into our third location, funny enough, because while we had signed that lease for our second, like it was our second location, right? We signed the lease. We were in the process of getting loans and getting contractor bids and all of that kind of stuff. We had somebody come into our first cafe from Rice University, and they said, "Man, we love this concept. This is awesome. You guys want to come be on campus at Rice University?" And we were like,
Oh,
they were like, "We built this cafe already. Half the equipment's already in there. You guys basically just have to get an espresso machine or whatever other little equipment you need, and then you can run it." And we're like, "Shoot, this is only going to cost us, I think it cost us $60,000 to set up." And it's like, how are we going to turn that down? Here we are. We signed this lease for the one in the Heights. We got money like we know is going to get tied up there. And we secretly, because we didn't want the landlords at the Heights, that hopefully they don't hear this podcast, but we didn't want the landlords at our Heights location because we should be all invested in that location, right? To get that up and running. We didn't want them to know we were actually in the middle of opening another location
oh,
at Rice University, right? Because the funds were diverted from the Heights location. But we knew that our Heights, we had to build that from the ground up. We knew that was going to take a long time. From the time you sign a letter of intent for the actual property until you open, it can be a year and a half, sometimes even 2 years. It really depends on permitting and contractors and all of that stuff. So we knew that Rice University, that ended up being our second location, even though we had just signed a lease for a second location. Rice ended up being our second location, and Heights ended up being our third location.
third location. Yeah.
Yeah, so we opened Rice unexpectedly, and really it was only within a few months, right? They came to us, they said, "Hey, we'd love to have you on our campus." And we went and looked at it, and we signed an operating agreement, and we were open within a matter of a few months there because it was
Excellent.
already turnkey. It was great. Yeah.
So now you have experience of 3 restaurants over and about 12 years of running restaurants, yeah, cafe.
Yeah.
And tell me, if you had to advise the new clients, entrepreneurs, what would be the challenges of running a cafe like yours? What should be they should be aware of from based on your experience? Yeah.
Yeah. So funds, having enough money is very important. I don't recommend people do it the way that I do it. If you don't have the experience, you have to have the money to pay people with the experience. Right. So I would say that for sure. If you have the experience and you want to work your butt off, you can make it successful with a little less money because you're the one running the show. Your team is really critical, right? So I talk about money. I couldn't afford a team in the beginning. I was the management team. But then once you can afford, if you start with money and you have a little experience, setting up a management team that really buys into your vision is very important.
Mhm.
And also learning how to manage people is really critical. I didn't know how to do that when I first, so I made a lot of mistakes. I was a terrible boss in the beginning. I lost plenty of people before I really started getting the hang of leadership. And so leadership is really key, and management experience is really key as well. So if you can have the management experience and the business experience for what you're starting, and then have the funds, I think those are kind of three key
Yeah.
things to being successful in business to start. And you're still going to learn a lot along the way. I didn't have any business background whatsoever, but I was really fortunate to get into the SBA's Emerging Leaders Program. I did the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program along the way. They're each about semester long courses. They are free courses, but you have to be nominated to get in and you have to fit the bill for the program. But it was really great to take those because I hadn't had any formal business training. And it was great to take them to learn, but it was also great because I learned that there was a lot of stuff that I was actually doing right. And it was just me learning it along the way. And so, yeah, so I think It's a tough call. The restaurant industry is a tough business. 90% of restaurants fail by the time they're 5 years old. And so it's a tough industry to go into. It's a lot of hard work. It doesn't have high profit margins. That's another thing. But if you're really passionate about it and you're passionate about people and hospitality, you can be successful if you have the drive and you have the grit and you have the management experience and you have the fun and your flexibility to change your vision. I think all of those things are pretty key to being successful.
Did you have to really market your restaurant, or word of mouth worked in your favor?
So I didn't have funds for marketing. I did our social media initially in the beginning. I wasn't able to bring on a marketing company. I did that about a little over a year. I was able to do that once we had broken even. Marketing is so key. Marketing and social media is so key. But initially, I couldn't do that. But I did what I could do. But really, I would say word of mouth is what kicked
Hmm.
in. And that takes, in restaurants, it takes 3 to 4 years for word of mouth to kick in. They talk about restaurants being like, you really reach your full potential and start breaking even around year 5. And it's true. That's exactly what happened to us. We had most of our bills paid back by year 5. We'd really picked up and we're busy by year 5 and starting to make money. That was even before we did our breakfast competition on Good Morning America, which really made us increase in business. That was in 2023.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah, in
And you got
2023, but
the recognition there by Good Morning America,
we
right?
did. That
Best
I mean that
breakfast.
that recognition was invaluable. We couldn't put a price on that kind of marketing.
Uh,
But I would say what got us even attention by Good Morning America to be on that show was because we had a marketing person who was putting out press releases that was getting us in top 10 breakfast in Houston or top 10 chicken and waffles. Or she was getting us in those small articles. And that's how Good Morning America found out about us, because of those small little articles they got us
Great.
in. But I would say PR and marketing is super key. We wouldn't be as busy as we are now without it.
Well, that's good. So you are successful now, and looking back over the years, any specific decisions that you took that you're thankful for that made the difference for you?
Yeah, I would say I'm really grateful that I made the decision to cash out my 401k rather than close the doors. So that's one. I'm really grateful that I really listened to the community around us and was flexible with my vision. And as hard as it was, I'm really grateful for all of the hard times that I went through in the beginning, because it really grew me as a person and as a leader and a boss. It was very challenging for me, and it was very hard. And it's very hard to become a good leader and a good boss. I talk to people all the time that just complain about their bosses in every industry, not just restaurants. And even though those were very difficult times, I'm incredibly grateful for the things that I learned along the way, and that has made me a better leader. And it really reflects in our team. And so I'm super grateful for that stuff as well.
Did you continue your association with SCORE, Jerry and Raj?
Sure. We hang out. We go to dinner sometimes. It's been a minute now, but they still will come in and support me sometimes and come have breakfast or coffee. And I just touch base with them. They send messages every once in a while to see how I'm doing. But yeah, absolutely. We've kept in touch over the years, and I'm their poster child. It's if they don't have somebody on staff, on the volunteer staff that does restaurants, like I'll have somebody show up at my store and be like, "Oh, Roger Dairy sent me over here because I want to start a cafe." And it's interesting because when I talk to them, they say 90% of the people that come in here, they just ended up telling them don't do it, or said or something along those lines, because people just don't really have the drive and determination. Entrepreneurship really is a special breed. You have to be willing to go through some hard things, but keep bouncing back.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah. That was wonderful discussion. And good luck to you and see you sometime soon.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Small Business Success Stories at SCORE Houston. If you are an entrepreneur or small business owner, we'd love to support your journey. You can reach us at 713-487-6565 or visit us at 8701 South Gessner, Suite 1200, Houston, Texas, 77074. Our office is open Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., except for federal holidays, and walk-ins are always welcome. To learn more, request free mentoring, or register for our workshops, visit us online at www.score.org/Houston. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and remember, at SCORE, we're here to help you thrive.